Hello and welcome to Tech Latest by Nikkei Asia, where we bring you the freshest updates from the technology sector in Asia. From Nikkei Asia's Tokyo headquarters, I'm Alice French.
And I'm Jada Nagamo. In this episode, our last of 2023, we'll be taking a look back at some of the highlights in tech news this year. From the AI boom to the China-US semiconductor war to the ongoing drama in the social media industry, 2023 has been a busy year for our tech reporters. We caught up with them to revisit their favorite stories from the past 12 months.
So we're going first to Annie, one of our correspondents in Taipei, who actually chose a story she wrote just 2 days ago as her favorite of the year. Annie, along with her colleague Lawley, has been closely following the semiconductor and smartphone industries for years, and 2023 has seen her cover such developments as TSMC's new chip facilities in the US and Japan, and Apple's move to relocate some of its production operations from China to India. Let's hear from Annie about her tech pick of 2023.
This is Annie Zhenting Fang. I would like to recommend you this deep dive about Moore's Law and global chip race for holiday reads. The chip race is hotter than ever, with TSMC, Intel, and Samsung still battling to push the limit of semiconductor physics, while China's top chipmaker, SMIC, with the help of Huawei, trying to close the gap. It's not just about shrinking transistors to make chips more powerful anymore. Even chip packaging, which was considered less technologically demanding, plays a key role to keep Moore's Law alive. We spoke to more than a dozen of chip industry leaders in Asia, in the US, and Europe, and have some exclusive anecdotes in the piece. I hope you will enjoy reading this new heated nanometer race.
So Annie's story mentioned that China's tech industry is still struggling to come to terms with the US's crackdown. Our senior business correspondent in Singapore, Akito, also picked out a story about the US-China tech war. Let's go to him for more.
This is Akito from Singapore. My pick of the tech story for this year is US big tech won't shake its China addiction, which I reported back in July. This data-driven story revealed that while the US tightened sanctions aimed at blocking China from accessing US technology, the biggest American tech companies still heavily rely on the Chinese market. Despite 5 years of decoupling, this reliance has barely changed and in some cases grown, putting these US tech companies at risk of international politics. Chip companies like Qualcomm, Texas Instruments, Broadcom, and Intel, they all relied on more than a quarter of their total revenue in China. In 2022, Tesla earned 22% of its total sales in China, and this was up from 8% in 2018. And Greater China remains Apple's second largest source of revenue. Now, these are obviously very serious risks for these companies and even the US economy, considering the fact that tech is one of the most important industries in the United States. After this story was published, in fact, in September, Apple's stock price fell 6.4%. It was a huge drop, and this was due to the report that China's restriction on the use of iPhones by central government employees are expanding. Now, this clearly showed and proved the risk that Apple has in China. Now, the tech tension between the US and China will probably continue to be one of the most important news topics for Nikkei Asia for next year. And I hope to bring you all more informative and interesting stories in 2024.
Now, it would be impossible to do a 2023 tech recap and not mention AI. And one company in particular, OpenAI from the US, has been dominating the industry with its chatbot Chat GPT. Recent headlines around the company have focused on CEO Sam Altman's shock dismissal and subsequent reappointment. But in February this year, our Hong Kong-based correspondent Sissy broke a different story about the use of Chat GPT in China. Here she is to explain more.
Hello everyone, this is Sissy. I wanted to share my scoop on China's directive to big tech companies to stop offering ChatGPT services early this year. Generative AI has been the dominant topic in the tech industry this year. Even though Chat GPT was not initially accessible in China, there were still some APIs available at that time. China's move was significant because it led to a competition among Chinese companies to develop their own large language models. It was clear that the company that succeeds in developing the most advanced model will have a greater opportunity to capture the vast AI market in China. Just like Baidu became China's dominant search engine after Beijing banned Google in 2010.
Sticking with China, we also asked Kenji, our chief business news correspondent from Hong Kong, for his top tech pick of the year. And he wanted to highlight a piece he wrote in June about the success of China's homegrown passenger aircraft. Over to Kenji for the details.
Hello, this is Kenji in Hong Kong. The story that I have chosen is China's COMAC soars helped by state-backed funding, which I wrote in June to highlight how heavy state support in various ways has been instrumental in boosting the Chinese aircraft manufacturer to lift off when its Japanese private counterpart had to fold its wings. Both COMAC and Mitsubishi Heavy Industries subsidiary Mitsubishi Aircraft officially kicked off in 2008 to develop passenger jet, a market where Airbus and Boeing virtually control globally. So where did the difference come from? My understanding is a vast difference in the level of government support. COMAC is getting all sorts of support, especially the financial backing that they need to endure long-term losses, since COMAC is one of the China's central enterprises, or 中央企业. But for Mitsubishi, investors were private listed companies with the exception of one Japanese government-sponsored bank. So when they were folding up, the Japanese company explained the reason to be, quote, lack of resources to endure continuous development for a long period of time. Well, as for the latest development, COMAC is eyeing the global market. There are two models, a mid-size C919 dubbed as 大飞机, meaning big or great airplane domestically, and a smaller ARJ21 are flying into Hong Kong for the first time to show off to the world. A major risk for COMAC, though, going forward, is its heavy reliance on American and European technology, given the ongoing Sino-American tensions.
Not just in tech, but across all sectors, 2023 saw tensions between China and Taiwan rising over disputes in the Taiwan Strait and ahead of Taiwan's elections next January. But as Annie and Lawley's deep dive from May explored, no matter how hot things got between the two powers, Taiwan remained an indispensable economy for the tech industry. Here's Lawley to explain why.
I picked a story about how Taiwan became the indispensable economy as my recommendation for our podcast listeners. I chose the story because I cry a lot over this story. No, I'm just kidding. But my dear colleagues Chanting Fang and I really put a lot of efforts into this. This is a collaborative story between Nikkei Asia, Nikkei, and the Financial Times. We spent more than 8 months working on this visual story. This story involves more than 15 people in Taiwan, Tokyo, Hong Kong, London, and New York. So I assume you still remember there were live-fire military drills by China circling Taiwan after the former U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi made a historic visit to the island last summer. In this story, we demonstrated the critical influence of the supply chain in Taiwan. Taiwan is best known for making cutting-edge semiconductors, but its companies also turn out other crucial components, from printed circuit boards to advanced camera lenses, and they run a huge device assembly operations in China. This has created an interdependence between Taiwan, China, and the US that has deepened even as the tensions between Beijing, Washington, and Taipei have risen. This is a very visually rich story with a lot of on-ground reporting by us. So if you haven't read it yet, I would strongly recommend you to read.
So we've heard from our reporters, but before we sign off for the year, we also wanted to highlight our personal favorites from 2023. Alice, what's your pick?
So I've been particularly interested in the changes in the social media landscape this year. with all of Elon Musk's alterations to Twitter, now X, and the outrage that they've caused amongst many users, which has left space open for alternative platforms such as Miski, which is based in Japan. Now, our reporter Ryotaro came on the podcast to talk about Miski back in August. Miski is a user-run platform where servers are managed by communities of social media users, such as fans of particular anime or movies. And it grew to be pretty popular this year, so much so that Miski HQ was founded as a private company just 4 months ago. Now, we haven't really heard much from Miski since they were founded as a company, and perhaps they didn't quite take off as much as some analysts predicted they would. Elon Musk is still very much dominating that space within social media. But I'm really interested to see how Miski and similar smaller social media platforms will fare in 2024. How about you, Jada? What's your pick?
There were so many great stories this year, but the one that was very memorable to me was TikTok takes on Shopee Tokopedia in ASEAN e-commerce race. The story was reported by our journalists across Singapore, Indonesia, and Malaysia, and dives into TikTok's emergence as one of Southeast Asia's most prominent e-commerce platforms. This year, we saw a lot of news focused on TikTok's hardships, especially in the face of U.S. regulatory scrutiny. So I thought this story on its success in Southeast Asia had a very interesting and refreshing angle to it.
Thanks, Jada. Yeah, that story was a highlight for me too. And we've both really enjoyed hosting Tech Latest together this year.
Yeah, Alice, thank you so much for the whole year. And I'm really excited to produce in 2024 too. That's all from us in 2023. Thank you very much for listening and engaging with our episodes. You can read more of our reporters' stories on Nikkei Asia's website, asia.nikkei.com.
Yes, and whilst we still have you, if you're enjoying Tech Latest and would like to support us, please do give us a follow on whichever podcast platform you use. We also really appreciate any reviews you can leave, as these help new listeners to find our episodes. We'll be back in the new year with more updates on the tech trends that matter in Asia. Our first episode of January 12th. Until then, have a fantastic holiday season and Happy New Year!